How's it going, people? Welcome in and get comfortable. PlayStation just had their state of play, so I'm going to break down everything we saw and provide some insight. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe if you want to see more of this content. The show itself ran for approximately 45 minutes and provided a handful of release dates for known 2025 games, as well as a sprinkling of entirely new announcements. I will say straight up that this was heavily a third-party showcase, and not many first-party studios were there or their big AAA exclusive partnerships. For example, there was no Ghost of Yotei, in which I assume will appear in the summer showcase, as well as no Death Stranding 2. A couple of days ago, the Death Stranding panel was announced to be on March 9th at South by Southwest, and so I imagine we will get a new trailer with a release date then. But without further ado, let me jump right into it. The opening act was Monster Hunter Worlds, a game we have seen a lot of at this point, but due to it being released later this month, it's heavily in its marketing cycle. There was a new trailer here with lots of monster hunting, but they also announced the first DLC to hit in spring, which brings a new monster to the roster. There was also a pre-order bonus exclusive to the PlayStation Store, which was a digital art book. Lots of people have been hands-on with this game as it has recently been running its beta tests, and I'm sure its popularity will translate to a positive reception when it releases on February 28th. Following this, we had a little SEGA section, starting with Shinobi Art of Vengeance from the creators of Streets of Rage 4. This is a 2D Metroidvania where you play as the titular Shinobi. The art looks awesome, and it's great to see two games of this type coming, as back in December we also saw Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Shinobi Art of Vengeance releases on August 29th. We then saw Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, which is a Sonic kart racer. There was no release date on this one, but they said a closed beta would be arriving soon. Probably the game I'm most torn on was the next one, Digimon Story Time Stranger, published by Bandai Namco. This effectively looks like Pokemon, which is no surprise, but the graphics really remind me of Sword and Shield. I would be interested to see the models in more detail, but right now I'm not too excited for this one. On the complete other side of the fence was Lost Soul Aside. This was a great showing, and I was very impressed with the environments and traversal. There is a part, which you can see here, where the playable character does a 360 spin around some kind of magical moving platform. I thought it was really cool. It has action combat and is not turn-based. It reminded me very much of modern Final Fantasy games. This one releases on May 30th, and pre-orders are going live soon. Moving on from this, we hit the small update section, which saw Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii have a demo drop this Friday 14th. Staying in the Yakuza world, we also saw Ichiban have a crossover with Dave the Diver, which was really quirky, and I enjoyed that a lot. Splitgate 2 has an alpha period soon in February, and WWE 2K25 reveals The Island mode, which is an online open zone area where you can customize your wrestler and fight other players. After the updates, we got a face-to-face with Randy Squared from Gearbox, as they showed off Borderlands 4. Now, I must say, for a game I'm not even remotely interested in, I thought this was a really good showing. Lots of gun gameplay, which is this franchise's signature asset, and the fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled action swept me up in the hype a bit. It looked very fun, and potentially even moved a non-first-person shooter player like myself to consider this game. They announced there would be a State of Play extended look at this game later in spring, but importantly, we did get a release date, which is September 23rd. Split Fiction then popped up, and I can't be more excited for this game. This is the Co-op Masters Hazelight's next game. The game constantly transitions between a fantasy world and a sci-fi world, and I'm sure it will be even more creative than their previous titles. Check out my review of It Takes Two if you want to have more of an understanding of what to expect from this game. Supermassive Games was up next with their game Directive 8020. 8020? 8020? Let's just say all of the above. This was a space thriller that revolves around a well-trodden path of an alien organism evolving and taking control. It was a full cinematic, so I'm not sure how this game will play, but it is supposedly in the Dark Pictures anthology series, so perhaps something similar to those in Gameplay 2. We'll find out when this releases on October 2nd. We saw a new Five Nights at Freddy's game coming in June that I'm sure the streamers will love, and also an octopus platformer, Darwin's Paradox. Stealing the show for me in the visual department was Midnight Walk, a very unique art style here, and in a world where we are just round the corner from South of Midnight, I'm excited that this is shortly after on May 8th. It seems to be a first-person action game, as the trailer also included weapons and combat, but I'm sure it's the narrative beats that this game will excel in. Interestingly, it is also coming to VR as well as console, showing that there is still some support for the system. Warriors Abyss was a shadow drop and is available now. This is a roguelike game in the Warriors franchise. We then had a little Onimusha section next, which saw Onimusha 2 get a HD remaster with quality of life updates hitting on May 23rd, but it's for PS4. This was a bit of an odd announcement. That means if you want to play it on current systems, it will be through backwards compatibility. That's just really a flat announcement in my eyes. We did get another look at the new title, The Way of the Sword, with more gameplay which made up for it slightly. Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater and Hell Is Us continued to impress me with further showings, and both got a release date. Metal Gear Solid on August 28th and Hell Is Us on November 4th. My favourite showing of this state of play was next with Lies of P DLC Overture. This is set in the winter and seemed to feature some familiar areas but also a lot of new ones. Some segments seem to show P summoning other stalkers and even using a bow. We saw some crazy combos as well, which I imagine would be special movesets for new weapons. Lies of P is one of my favourite games of the last 5 years, and so I look forward to jumping into this when it hits in the summer. Dreams of Another was a very trippy 3D pixel art game, which is a third-person shooter. Shooting your gun in this game creates new things in the environment rather than destroying them, which is a niche take that the developers are implementing. And then finally, we saw the heavily rumoured Days Gone remaster, which is hitting in April and will have new modes and accessibility. In classic PlayStation fashion, it will only cost $10 if you have the PS4 title. Stellar Blade's next DLC and PC port were announced for June 2025, and then we hit the slowdown with the PS Plus announcements. In February, coming to the service is Top Spin, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Lost Records Bloom and Rage. The latter game here being a new title and one I'm really jazzed for. Later in the year, Blueprints and Abiotic Factor will be arriving, and then the first 3 Armored Core games and Patapon 3 hit the Classics catalogue. The next game probably piqued most people's interest, Tides of Annihilation. This was a third-person action game boasting impressive boss fights. The combat animations look very slick, and the art style is akin to a lot of popular JRPG IPs. It is set in modern London, so I take a shine to it just for that alone. There was no release date on this one, but I'm sure it will be popular when it releases on PlayStation, Xbox Series, and PC. The next 2 games, which should have been building up to the finale, were actually the most disappointing for me. The first, and probably better showing, was Metal Eden, a first-person shooter which was a sci-fi run-and-gun type game. Considering we have just had a deeper dive into Doom the Dark Ages a couple of weeks ago, this one just didn't do anything to break out of that mold. Mindseye was the penultimate game, and unfortunately it just looked like the most generic game you could think of, set in an alternative dystopian reality where AI and human greed have begun to cause destruction in the world. Wait, did I say alternative reality? This third-person action game doesn't seem to be doing anything better than all the games that came before it. In this genre, when you're against titans like Cyberpunk, GTA, and even Watch Dogs to a lesser degree, you just have to be showing more than this. If this did interest anyone, it releases in summer. Rounding out the show, we had the next game from Returnal developers Housemarque. The title is Saros, and the main character is portrayed by Rahul Kohli, who I do really like and a big gamer to boot. There was absolutely nothing to gain from this trailer, as it was a full cinematic, but pulling from the PlayStation blog, the developer said, Saros is an action game with the haunting story of a lost off-world colony on Korkoza under an ominous eclipse. You play as Arjun Devrai, a powerful Soltari enforcer who will stop at nothing to find who he is looking for. Our goal is to create an emotional and powerful character study that explores the cost it takes to to create a new future. A key gameplay distinction between Saros and Returnal is permanent resources and progression, making every death valuable. After every death, you will face a changed world, but in Saros, you will be able to choose and permanently upgrade your loadout from an evolving set of weapons and suit upgrades to come back stronger to overcome the challenges you face on Carcosa. Based off this, it seems like it will share Returnal's roguelike gameplay with a strong story but more quality of life changes to the rogue elements. Housemart said they will be hosting a gameplay deep dive later in the year ahead of the projected 2026 release. All in all, an okay to good state of play. The best showings for me were either DLCs or known quantities, but it was good to get a lot of release dates, and the announcements of Saros and Tides of Annihilation certainly propped the show up. Interestingly, there was none of the live service games that Sony seemed to be basing their new strategy on. We know that recently a handful of them have been cancelled, but we were expecting Bungie's Marathon and Fair games this year, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. Let me know in the comments below what you enjoyed and what you thought was a big miss. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and for everything casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.
Perfect.